Okay, so we got the continuing saga of this little machine here, the Commodore Plus 4. I had a problem with the processor overheating. I checked all of the remaining chips and all of the kernels, etc., including the ROMs out, and they're all fine. There's no problems with voltages to them, but it seemed that the power supply putting out 11 volts was going to do some damage, so it did. It did it to the processor, which is inherently unstable as far as voltages are concerned for some reason, any slight fluctuation, and this machine sends all of the residual current or all of the over voltage straight to this processor. So the processor was basically toast. So I kind of got to thinking about replacing it, and I thought go down the route of putting in a standard 6502, because the CPUs for these are notoriously difficult to obtain, and if you do get them, there's no guarantee that they're going to work. So rather than put in a used component with no guarantees, I thought let's put a brand new 6502 in there. So I started to put together a small board on Veroboard to try and see if we could do the workarounds, because on the variant that's in the Plus 4, they kind of altered it slightly, and that was always going to cause problems. Now, so I looked at the pinouts, looked at the way the processor was set, and I kind of came to the conclusion that I was going to lose a little bit of functionality, and it was mainly around the cassette deck. Turning the machine on and off was going to be one of them, because there simply wasn't a pin or a register on the new 6502 to deal with that properly, and some of the instruction set was going to be a little bit off. I was going to have issues. Well, when I looked in, I thought I was going to have issues with launching some of the ROMs, which isn't a massive problem, but you want to try and keep functionality as much as possible, regardless of what kind of workaround you need to do to repair it. So I ended up buying a set of ROMs for them, having a look at them, and discovering that I was going to have to do a lot more work than simply dropping in maybe a daughter board with a 6502 on it. I did a bit of research and I found that this had already been done, and that was quite surprising for the lack of sales that this machine had in the UK. And it was a UK company, and he'd basically already done this, and it was part of Hack Junk, which is his website if you want to have a quick look at it. Now I thought, you know what, I'll order the parts while I check the rest of the board out, and I couldn't find any real problems with it. So all I did was I waited for these parts to arrive, and I kind of thought that it might work or it might not. You're never sure. So I then got sent the two ROMs, or the CPU and the new kernel, which is something that I was going to have to work on if I just put a 6502 in place anyway. And first off, out of just sheer curiosity, I installed the new processor on the board, and it fired up. It worked. It came with a nice, the original launch screen with Commodore Plus 4, and the usual memory-free Empress F1 and all this kind of thing, and it was fine. It seemed to be okay. So at this point I hadn't changed the kernel that was supplied with it as well, and I thought to myself, maybe the kernel isn't going to affect as much as I thought, and it didn't. You could still run BASIC on it, you could still load a couple of images or programs from an SD, which I've got an external SD card for it, and it seemed to work, but it had issues with more complex software. That's where I thought it was going to fall down anyway. So I disconnected the machine, put in the new kernel, fired it back up, and you know, everything was the same. It would still run the basic programs, but it would also run the more complex software. And as I thought, you did lose the stop and start of the tape drive, but that's something I'm not worried about, because at the end of the day I'm not going to be using tapes much on it, and I can manually stop a tape drive. I'm going to be using predominantly SD disk drive, or SD version of a disk drive on it, so that wasn't a big problem. So at the end of the day, this little Plus 4 has had quite a lot of surgery, from keyboards through to power supply issues, through to new power supply connectors on the board, through to a new kernel and a different CPU. But the machine is still a Plus 4. It still launches the packages which I was worried wouldn't work, and it still does what a Plus 4 should do, and that's where we should be going down. Now I've got a reliable machine, because I replaced all of the other ROMs in it for known good tested ones, and I've checked every component out on the board to make sure it's not going to cause issues. And basically, I've, for want of a better term, other than a few little bit of cleaning up on the keyboard where it's gone a bit yellow, the machine is almost perfect. So that's what you want from this. So it's got a good deal of life left in it, and it also is not going to have the issues with having to find what would be a proprietary Plus 4 power supply. So just going to give you a little bit of overview what the new board looks like, and that should be the end of, hopefully the end of the saga for the Plus 4. And I'm going to change a few keys on the keyboard off the spare one I had, because of slight yellowing where somebody's covered the keyboard by the looks of it and left a little bit of an edge which has gone yellow. So let's have a look. Okay, so this is your Plus 4 again, opened up. As you can see, the keyboard's in place, the cheap and cheerful ribbon connectors in place. It's not very nice, but it does work. It's better than the one used in the Sinclair machines, because at least they've reinforced it to stop it from cracking as much or breaking. And there's the new kernel. Okay, and as I said, the machine works without the kernel, but you've got a few things that actually don't work as well as they should be. More complex routines seem to kind of phase it. And then there's the little daughter board. And really, it was something that I was going to do anyway, but it's already been done, so why repeat what's been done? And this one works really well. You got your processor and you got your daughter board, which is, it plugs directly into the socket, so there's no real soldering needed to do. Oh, you could remove the processor, and you could remove the socket on the board and put it lower down if you needed to, but I don't think that would really be any advantage on this, because it's got a nice gap on the board between the processor and the actual socket where you plug it into, which means that it doesn't foul the keyboard, which is a nice idea. But also, it's, you know, as I say, it's Hack Junk who, you know, produces these, and having looked at it, it does the swapping of the pins, which is nice, which is something I was looking at doing, and it was something I actually initially sketched up, but I'm quite glad in a way that it's already been done and it's already been tested. It just saves a lot of hassle. So if you have one of these, pop over to Hack Junk and see if they can get you one. Okay, they're nice job, really nice job. I can't, you know, say enough about them. And so it's all in there, it's all ready to go. Okay, so it, as you can tell, it does work, and let's have a quick look. So as you can see, this is the Plus 4, and it's powered on, and the little normal repeating script on basic, and if I press run, it works a treat. Okay, so the machine is working. Press F1, press return, and you're back into the productivity packages, as they called it. So, you know, it's all nicely working, which is brilliant because that's the way it should be, and even the reset key works and it's quite quick. So don't have any problems with the machine now. So hopefully all I'm going to do now is just change a few keycaps over, because as you can see it's yellow stripe on those, slightly yellow on the bar, and slightly yellow down the sides. But you know, that's not going to cause me a problem. I've got plenty of spare keys, and so I'm going to just swap those over at a later date. But at the end of the day, this machine's working, it runs, and it does what it needs to do. So all in all, very successful, and worthwhile spending the time to bring an old machine back to life. And here's the machine running. It's quite difficult trying to hold it and play with one hand, but there you go, you got the idea. So this is hopefully the end of the Plus 4 saga. So I hope you've enjoyed this little mini series, and I hope if you get your Plus 4 and it does have similar faults, you know how to go about looking into the faults and hopefully repairing it and keeping it running. So thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and if you like what you see, subscribe. If you don't, have a great day, and we'll meet each other on this channel sometime in the future, I hope. So thank you very much. Bye bye.